Hi everyone, Mike and Jamie here, and today's top 5 are the top 5 financial red flags before you marry someone. Mike, what do we have to say on this topic?
Well, we know that money problems are the number one cause of divorce, so making sure you're on the same page before getting married, probably a good idea.
It's a big deal. But we have a couple of data points from some research companies. So we have Dr. Sonia Britt in a study from Kansas State says arguments about money are the top predictor of divorce. In a 2023 survey from the National Endowment for Financial Education, found that 43% of U.S. adults in relationships admit to committing financial deception. So we're going to jump right in. Number 5, countdown is backwards as always. The number 5 top financial red flag before you marry someone is gambling addiction or speculative risk. What do we have to say about that?
Yeah, we've seen this. I mean, it's something that is an addiction, just like, being addicted to drugs or alcohol, and this could definitely take your marriage off the rails.
And will someone who's addicted to gambling be forthcoming and say, I'm a gambling addict?
That's a good question. I doubt that this is as easily discernible as something like a drug or alcohol addiction. So it's definitely something that you would want to pay attention to. And increasingly with online gambling, sports betting, just being everywhere. And for millennials, I know Cooper, who is helping us with his recording, recent college grad, for that generation, it's a big problem.
Yeah.
People are really losing a lot of money, spending a lot of money on gambling that they don't have to lose.
So pay attention. That's number 5. Number 4 is extreme financial control or power imbalance. Michael, what do we have to say about that?
Yeah, this one's a little scary. If you're coming across someone that wants to be the only one that's handling the checkbook, so to speak, or making all the financial purchase decisions, or you have to run everything by each other, it's a red flag for more than just money. It's a control freak that, maybe could cause some problems in your marriage, I would think.
And it can also look like obsessively tracking the other spouse's spending. So let's say I'm in the parking lot at Target, I'm about to leave, and I get a text from my spouse saying, I see you spent $43 at Target. What did you buy? It could be something like that. So watch for that. That can be a red flag of power imbalance. Number 3 of top 5 financial red flags before you marry someone. The number 3 flag is no long-term thinking. So what does this look like, Michael?
Yeah, this is a big one. And we see this as financial planners all the time. When you're sitting in a meeting and you're talking to 2 spouses and the questions start coming up, what does retirement look like for you? What are your goals for the next 5 years? And there's no way that they can verbalize that because they really haven't thought about it. They don't have that. It's tough to work towards something as a couple if you don't know what your shared goals are or what each person's goals are. So it's hard to play around.
So if I'm out on a date and I am thinking this might be a prospective spouse for me, what is a question I would ask to try to dig in and see, does this person have any long-term goals? What is the resource I can fall back on? Maybe the resourceful question.
I think this would probably, and I'm no relationship guru, but I have been married for 12 years, so I know a little bit about this. This would probably come up later in the stages of dating, before talking about marriage, where I would ask, what does the future look like for you? Like, what do you want ideally? Is it a vacation home in Vail or think something like that where you could get some gauge on, are they thinking about the future? Do they know where they want to go? And is that where I want to go with them?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that one thing that I did in my marriage was Justin was so good about going out on date nights. And we would say, what's your 5-year goal, right? Okay, well, let's take it further. What's your 10-year goal? If you could have a 20-year goal, what does that look like? And it just gets you talking about it and gets you into the practice of that long-term thinking. Okay, number 2 financial red flag before you marry someone is complete opposite spending values. What does this look like, Michael?
Oh boy, you don't even need to be in financial services to have seen problems with this. When you've got one spouse that is YOLO, living for the moment, money comes in, money goes out, and the other.
What does YOLO mean for everyone born maybe 1980 and
you only live once.
YOLO people.
So, this is a really big problem because it's a fundamental difference in the way that you see life and treat money. And I've talked with people that are like, hey, there's no guarantee that we're going to have tomorrow. I'm going to, for the moment. And it's like that, that's great. But if you have a spouse that wants to invest, have some financial security and freedom. That's difficult if you're not on the same page.
And I think there is always maybe one who spends a little bit more and one who decides to save a little bit more. I just feel like that's how relationships end up, is you have one who's maybe a little bit more of a spender, one who's a little bit more of a saver. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about complete opposites, like complete opposites. And I don't care that you want to save. I'm going to go buy, impulsively buy a vacation or a new car without discussing it with you. So these are complete opposite.
Maybe a best practice for this, just thinking through it, would be having an agreement on at what dollar amount you're spending on something is a threshold that we need to discuss, right? Because I think you brought up the point earlier, like, I see your Target spending $46. What was that? That's control. You don't need to run every small purchase. And Rick Hurley and I, as owners of Heirloom Wealth Management, we have an agreement. It's like, okay, you've got to operate as a business. You need to be able to make independent decisions. Once it exceeds this dollar amount, let's sit down and talk about it. So, I think it's just a good best practice, whether you're in a business or married, to have that discussion.
Agreed. All right, number one, everyone. Number one financial red flag before you marry someone is lack of financial transparency. All right, Michael, why is this number one on our list?
Oh boy, this is a big one. And I've got some experience early in my career that was extremely eye-opening for me. Early in my career, I worked at a company called Wells Fargo Financial. What our job was, somebody would go buy a piece of furniture, maybe finance it at 0%. That was good for 36 months. That would be my lead as a credit manager at this part of Wells Fargo, to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm glad you're able to purchase that piece of furniture. Here's the terms of that agreement. When we approved that, we got a copy of your credit report, and a couple things caught my attention. And, I'd highlight, hey, this is leading up to the financial crisis. You're paying more on credit cards than you are in your house. That kind of conversation. Set up a meeting. I can't tell you how many times, dozens of times, I would be in meeting, both spouses would show up and we start having a dialogue around the financial situation. I could just see one of them getting uncomfortable, and then we start going through the debts, and the other is like, what is this? And they would have no idea that there was $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 of credit card debts. I think this happens a lot more than people will realize. And boy, you talk about infidelity. I don't know that this ranks as high as, cheating on your spouse, but boy, that's a gut punch.
Yeah, so we call it lack of financial transparency. I think a more dynamic term for it could be either financial deception or financial infidelity. So let that really sink in. And actually, if I can go on and expound on some of those data points we said at the very beginning of the podcast, that same National Endowment for Financial Education study from 2023 says 85% of adults who admit to financial deception, this has negatively impacted their relationship. Furthermore, it says financial infidelity, and they call it that, financial infidelity can erode trust in ways similar to emotional infidelity. I think it would be right up there. I don't know if it would be worse. It could be worse, but financial infidelity is a big deal. So it could.
And I think a best practice here, as you're entering a relationship, hopefully before you get married, that you have a discussion around, hey, and I would suggest to anyone, this has come up, but I wouldn't suggest anyone not marrying someone because they had debt. But if you're not on the same page on how you're going to manage that, and you don't know that they have that before they enter the marriage, that could be a shocker. And if you're not on the same page, to work through that, that's immediately creating stress that didn't have to be there. So
yeah, this is such a big deal, especially in the dating scene, that you guys should look this up. This was in the Wall Street Journal, August 18th, 2024. The title of the article was, and Michael found this one last year, sent it out, or a couple years ago, sent it out to all of us. The title is, hey baby, can I get your number? And by that, I mean your credit score. So this is a big deal. Dating apps are recognizing this. There's some financial compatibility that needs to happen when you're matching. So it's a big deal. Some things that financial infidelity can include, or lack of financial transparency, is the hidden or uncontrolled debt. That's an easy one to hide for a while. Secret spending, separate financial lives without discussion, avoiding hard conversations, and emotional escalation during money talks. So just be honest. I think that's always best practice.
Yeah.
All right, so rundown of top 5. There you have it. Number 5 was gambling addiction. Number 4 was extreme financial control or power imbalance. Number 3 is no long-term thinking. Number 2 is completely opposite spending values. And number 1 is lack of financial transparency. Thanks for joining us.